Here's a look at your market recap on this Friday, the 6th day of June. Another incredible week in the cattle markets, but they didn't hog all the glory this week, no pun intended. Even the hog markets showed some gains this week. Grain markets closed positive for the week as well. Getting into some of those markets, we'll start off with negotiated feedlot trade. That was the biggest surprise of the week. As of the 2 o'clock cutoff time on Friday, 66,243 head of negotiated sales were reported. Texas had 8,227 head, mostly all at $232. That was $9 to $11 higher for the week. Kansas reported a big week for them, 12,387 head. Live sales there, 8 to 12 higher, 230 to 235. Iowa reported 16,927 head. Live sales mostly at $240, which was up $3 to $10. Dress sales mostly at $380, which was $9 higher. Nebraska reported 15,232 head as of the 2 o'clock cutoff time. Live sales in Nebraska reported mostly at $240 to $244. That was $7 to $9 higher. Dress sales $10 to $15 higher, mostly at $380. Looking at the early numbers, we would expect that those weighted average prices, when all is said and done next week, live is going to come in somewhere around $8 higher for the week. Dress sales will be somewhere around $10 higher for the week. Either way, even if we're off a little bit one way or the other, those weighted average prices will undoubtedly set all-time new record highs once again. Box beef cutout values this week. Choice was actually down a touch for the week, $1.26 lower, $365.08. Select was up 8 cents for the week at $356.73. On Friday, those values, the closing $8.35 spread between the Choice and the Select. Volume 103 loads of cuts, trimmings, and grinds. Taking a look at the livestock futures, the closes on Friday for the week. Live cattle were $625 to $10.83 higher. Feeder cattle were $993 to $11.42 higher. And the lean hogs $130 to $438 higher. Live cattle for June closed on Friday at $226.30, up $340 for the day. August at $218.87, up $205 for the day. October at $215.52, up $155 for the day. Feeder cattle for August up $1, $310.15. September at $309.12, up $82. October at $306.90, up $82. The CME cash feeder cattle index on Friday, 306.16. That's an all-time record high, based on an 800-pound steer up through the 12-state feeding region. Lean hogs for June, Friday's close, 102.62 up 177. July at 107.10 up 230. August 109.40 up 235. Taking a look at the cattle auctions, some of the highlights this week. Callaway Livestock Center on Monday, they sold 22 head of 434-pound steers at $465. New Cambria Livestock Auction, 37 head, 495-pound steers at $446. Lawley Brothers Livestock Auction had a package of 521-pound steers at $439. The weighted average price statewide on those light 5-weight steers this week at $407. Kingsville Livestock Auction, they sold 24 head of 552-pound steers at $417. South Central Regional Stockyards in Vienna, 32 head, 614-pound steers at $390. Lawley Brothers Livestock Market in Macon, a full load of 717-pound steers at $346 and a quarter. The weighted average price statewide on the light 7 weights this week at $329. Kingsville sold 147 head of 752-pound steers at $347. Callaway Livestock Center, 2 loads, 857-pound steers, $316.10. Joplin Regional Stockyards had a load of 918-pound steers at $285. On the heifer side, 21 head of 536-pound heifers at Callaway, $387.50. The average statewide on the light 5-weight heifers this week, $360. 4 full loads of heifers, 723 to 738 pounds in Macon, Lawley Brothers Livestock Market. All 4 loads sold at $322.10. The average price statewide on those light 7-weight heifers this week at $311. One thing we did note this week at the auction barns, demand was best for the heavyweight yearlings. Of course, that does kind of follow our seasonal trends as the days start getting hotter. The calves demand prices kind of tend to usually drop in June and July, and we see the highest prices of the year seasonally typically on the heavier weight yearlings. As we get into the hot summers, they just get really hard to find. Of course, a lot of those rules of thumb have went out the window lately, but we did see some of that start to develop this week as the heavier weight yearling cattle did show more significant gains than some of the lighter weights. Also, this week, the slaughter cattle markets and slaughter bulls just continue to get higher and higher as the overall slaughter numbers nationwide are running much lower than last year as supplies just don't exist out there. We're back into record prices on both the slaughter cows and the slaughter bulls, with some of those cattle tallying up to really big values when you figure the per head price for those cull animals. Turning our attention now to the grain markets. At the elevators around the state this week, soybean bids were 21 to 41 cents higher, wheat 21 to 28 higher, corn bids were 1 lower to 37 higher. Corn bids at the elevators in St. Louis, 464, Kansas City, 450. Soybean bids, St. Louis, 1081, Kansas City, 1062 to 1087. Wheat bids, St. Louis, 559 to 561, Kansas City at 549. Taking a look at the closing futures on Friday. For the week, soybeans were 9 to 15 higher, wheat 16 to 20 higher. Corn, July was 2 lower, the other contracts 10 cents higher. Soybean meal, the nearby contracts were 30 to 60 lower. Once you get further out into September, October, 40 cents to $1.10 higher. Taking a look at the closes on Friday. Corn for July up 3 cents at 442.5. September, 433.25 up 1 3/4. July soybeans 5.5 higher, 1057.25. August 1050 3/4 up 4 1/4. November new crop beans at 1037 up 3 3/4. Wheat contracts July at 554 3/4 up 9 1/4. September at 568 3/4 up 9. Soybean meal for July down $1.40 a ton at $295.70. Soybean oil for July 47.50 a hundredweight. That was up 85 cents. Before we wrap up everything for the week, just want to remind you of a few cow sales taking place tonight. Actually, it just got started about an hour and a half ago at 4:30. Joplin Regional Stockyards, they've got a special monthly replacement cow sale, expecting about 1,000 head there. Mocan Livestock Market in Butler, they'll have a special cow sale Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock, about 500 head. Saturday evening at 6 o'clock, the last of the Show Me Select heifer sales will take place at F&T Livestock Market in Palmyra. They have about 180 head there. And then, of course, on Saturday, the monthly hay auction at Southwest Missouri Hay Auctions down in Golden City. They've got quite a long list of consignments, a lot of new crop hay coming in, some exceptional quality hay, a lot of tested hay, some grass fescue I seen listed on the early listings, testing up almost 12.5% protein, which is incredible for some grass. A lot of alfalfa testing up in the low 20s, 19, 20, 21, 22 range, with some relative feed values pushing up near to 200 points. With the Missouri Department of Agriculture, that's a recap of your markets for Friday. This is Tony Hancock.